Hello everyone, I'm Himanshi Hans. In today's video, we will be discussing the judgment delivered by the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Sita Soren versus Union of India. It was delivered on 4th March 2024 by 7-judge Constitution Bench of the Honorable Supreme Court. The bench overruled the verdict in P.V. Narasimha Rao versus State, wherein it was established that the Member of Parliament and Member of Legislative Assemblies enjoyed immunity if they cast vote in the House after taking bribe for it. Let us first refer to Articles 105 Clause 2 and 194 Clause 2 of the Constitution before we discuss the judgment. Article 105 powers, privileges, etc. of the Houses of Parliament and of the members and committees thereof. No member of Parliament shall be liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said or any vote given by him in Parliament or any committee thereof, and no person shall be so liable in respect of the publication by or under the authority of either House of Parliament of any report, paper, votes or proceedings. Similar immunity has been given to the members of the legislature of a state under Article 194(2) of the Constitution. Now, let us come to the judgment of Sita Soren versus Union of India, which was before the High Court of Jharkhand. The judgment was dated 17th of February 2014. The allegation against the appellant was that she accepted a bribe from an independent candidate for casting her vote in his favor. However, as borne out from the open balloting for the Rajya Sabha seat, she did not cast her vote in favor of the alleged bribe giver and instead cast her vote in favor of a candidate belonging to her own party. Now, this round of election in question was annulled and a fresh election was held where the appellant voted in favor of the candidate from her own party again. Now, the appellant moved the High Court to quash the charge sheet and the criminal proceeding instituted against her. She claimed protection under Article 194(2) of the Constitution, relying on the judgment of the Constitution Bench of the Honorable Supreme Court in P.V. Narasimha Rao versus State. However, the High Court declined to quash the criminal proceedings on the ground that the appellant had not cast her vote in favor of the alleged bribe giver and thus is not entitled to the protection under Article 194(2). Now, this appeal was before the Supreme Court, and while hearing the appeal against the High Court's decision, the 3-judge bench of the Honorable Supreme Court said that the question that whether by virtue of Article 105(2) and 194(2) of the Constitution, the MPs or MLAs can claim immunity from the prosecution on a criminal charge of bribery was dealt by a 5-judge bench in P.V. Narasimha Rao versus State. Hence, considering the wide ramification of the question, the doubts raised, and the issue being a matter of public importance, the correctness of P.V. Narasimha Rao was referred to a larger bench. Now, before we move into the discussion on Sita Soren's judgment, let us discuss what was held in the P.V. Narasimha Rao judgment. So, the general elections for the 10th Lok Sabha were held in 1991, wherein Congress emerged as the single largest party and formed a minority government with Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao as the Prime Minister. A motion of no confidence was moved in the Lok Sabha against the government. It was alleged that P.V. Narasimha Rao and several other MPs were parties to the criminal conspiracy and passed on several lakhs of rupees to the alleged bribe takers to defeat the no confidence motion. Now, in this judgment of P.V. Narasimha Rao versus State, the majority of 5-judge Constitution bench held that the MPs who allegedly accepted bribe and voted against the no confidence motion were entitled to immunity under Article 105(2) of the Constitution. It was held that no member is answerable in a court of law or any similar tribunal for what he has said in Parliament. This is recognition of the fact that a member needs the freedom to say what he thinks is right in Parliament, undeterred by the fear of being proceeded against. A vote, whether cast by voice or gesture or the aid of a machine, is treated as an extension of speech or a substitute for speech and is given the protection that the spoken word has. Now, the court held that the alleged bribe takers who cast their vote against the no confidence motion enjoyed immunity from prosecution in a court of law under Article 105, Clause 2 of the Constitution. However, a member who abstained from voting and the alleged bribe givers were held not to enjoy the same immunity. It was held that for breach of parliamentary privileges and its contempt, Parliament may proceed against both the alleged bribe takers and bribe givers. Now, on the other hand, the minority opinion was that neither the alleged bribe takers nor the alleged bribe givers enjoyed the protection of Article 105, Clause 2. An MP does not enjoy immunity under Article 105(2) from being prosecuted for an offence involving the offer or acceptance of a bribe for speaking or giving his vote in Parliament or any committee. However, this was the minority opinion. The judgment was delivered by 4:1 ratio, and this was the minority opinion. Now, coming to the present judgment of Sita Soren versus Union of India before the Honorable Supreme Court, let us first discuss the submissions of the parties in this case. So, the following submissions were made on behalf of the appellant. First, overruling the long settled law in P.V. Narasimha Rao is unwarranted based on the established tests for overturning judicial precedents. Second, the immunity for MPs and MLAs was meant to protect them from executive oppression, especially during votes or speeches against the government. Third, constitutional privileges for MPs and MLAs do not contradict the rule of law. They protect the dignity of the legislators. Fourth, the majority judgment in P.V. Narasimha Rao respects Parliament's power to address corruption among members, similar to restrictions on discussion about judges. Fifth, parliamentary privilege in both India and the UK is essential for democracy, and it applies only to legislative functions like voting and speeches. While determining whether an act is immune from judicial scrutiny, the necessity test is to be applied, that is, whether there is a nexus between the act in question and the legislative process of voting or making speeches. Sixth, attempts to limit the scope of Articles 105 Clause 2 and 194 Clause 2 would be constitutionally unjustified. Abstaining from voting also constitutes casting a vote. Seventh, the minority judgment in P.V. Narasimha Rao wrongly interpreted the term in respect of as arising out of. Eighth, the offence of bribery does not affect the constitutional immunity once a vote or speech is made, fulfilling the in respect of condition. Ninth, overruling the majority judgment would lead to negative consequences, including potential abuse of law by political parties in power. Lastly, Voting in Rajya Sabha elections is protected under Article 194(2) as it is part of the legislative process. However, the submission on behalf of the respondent was that the decision in P.V. Narasimha Rao is inapplicable to the instant case. He submitted that the exercise of franchise by an elected member of the Legislative Assembly in a Rajya Sabha election does not fall within the ambit of Article 194 Clause 2, and thus P.V. Narasimha Rao does not have any application to the present case. He also submitted that the objective of Article 194 Clause 2 is to protect speech and conduct in relation to the functions of the legislature. Therefore, any conduct which is not related to legislative functions such as the election of members to the Rajya Sabha will fall outside the ambit of Article 194 Clause 2. He submitted that the election of members to the Rajya Sabha is akin to any other election process and cannot be treated as a matter of business or function of the legislature. Now let us also discuss what the amicus curiae submitted in this case. The amicus curiae in the case submitted that the majority judgment must be reconsidered and the view of the minority reflects the correct position of law. He contended that the majority judgment had erroneously given a wide interpretation to the expression in respect of and granted immunity to MPs from criminal prosecution when they accepted a bribe to cast a vote in Parliament. The object of Article 105 is not to place MPs above the law when the offence has been committed before the MP enters the House of Parliament. He further contended that the minority judgment correctly noted that the offence of bribery is complete before the member even enters the House, and therefore the offence had no connection or correlation with the vote that she may cast in Parliament. Let us now come to what all was discussed and held in this judgment. Reconsidering P.V. Narasimha Rao does not violate the principle of stare decisis. On the preliminary argument of the appellant that overruling of the long settled law in P.V. Narasimha Rao is unwarranted by the application of the tests laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court on overturning judicial precedent, this court referred to Maganlal Chaganlal Private Limited versus Municipal Corporation of Greater Bombay and said that the ability of the court to reconsider its decision is necessary for the organic development of law and the advancement of justice. Further, the court said that if the court is denuded of its power to reconsider its decisions, the development of constitutional jurisprudence would virtually come to a standstill. The court also reiterated that the doctrine of stare decisis is not an inflexible rule of law and it cannot result in perpetuating an error to the detriment of the general welfare of the public. The court also explained that its earlier decisions can be reviewed by the court if it believes that there is an error or the effect of the decision would harm the interests of the public, or if it is inconsistent with the legal philosophy of the Constitution. The court stated that the period of time over which the case has held the field is not of primary consequence. Hence, the court said that the majority judgment in P.V. Narasimha Rao deals with an important question of constitutional interpretation which has wide ramifications on public interest, probity in public life, and the functioning of parliamentary democracy, and as it contains several apparent errors in its interpretation of the text of Article 105 of the Constitution, therefore the court proceeded on adjudicating upon the interpretation of the Constitution as it stands. Parliamentary privilege in India. So the court stated that clauses 1 and 2 of Article 105 of the Constitution ensure freedom of speech within Parliament, and this privilege is not only crucial for Parliament and its members to perform their duties, but also central to the function of a democratic legislative body. Additionally, the court addressed Clause 3, which permits Parliament to pass laws regarding its privileges periodically. However, the scope of these privileges in India must align with the Constitution. The court explained that it is the responsibility of the judiciary to determine whether the privilege claimed by the Parliament or the legislature exists and if it has been exercised properly. The court cited the case of Pandit M.S.M. Sharma versus Sri Krishna Sinha, in which it was ruled that the privileges of the House of Parliament under Article 105 Clause 3 are those which belong to the House of Commons in the UK at the commencement of the Constitution, which would prevail over the fundamental rights guaranteed to citizens under Article 19(1)(a). However, if the Parliament were to enact a law codifying its privilege, then it may not step over the fundamental rights of citizens by virtue of Article 13 of the Constitution. However, the court clarified that if Parliament were to pass a law codifying its privileges, such legislation would need to respect the fundamental rights of citizens in accordance with Article 13 of the Constitution. Additionally, the court noted that the privileges enjoyed by members of Parliament are closely linked to the functioning of the House as a whole. Individual members cannot claim privileges or immunities that are unrelated to the collective work of the entire House. In the course of this judgment, while analyzing the reasoning of the majority and minority in P.V. Narasimha Rao, the Honorable Court adjudicated on all the aspects of the controversy, including whether by virtue of Articles 105 and 194 of the Constitution, a member of Parliament or the Legislative Assembly can claim immunity from prosecution on a charge of bribery in a criminal court. The court disagreed and overruled the judgment of the majority on this aspect. So the concluding points held by the court were as follows. First, the doctrine of stare decisis is not an inflexible rule of law. A larger bench of the court may reconsider a previous decision in appropriate cases, bearing in mind the tests which have been formulated in the precedents of the court. Second, unlike the House of Commons in the UK, India does not have ancient and undoubted privileges which were vested after a struggle between Parliament and the King. Privileges in pre-independence India were governed by statute in the face of a reluctant colonial government. The statutory privilege transitioned to a constitutional privilege after the commencement of the Constitution. Third, whether a claim to privilege in a particular case conforms to the parameters of the Constitution is amenable to judicial review. Fourth, an individual member of the legislature cannot assert a claim of privilege to seek immunity under Articles 105 and 194 from prosecution on a charge of bribery in connection with a vote or speech in the legislature. Such a claim to immunity fails to fulfill the twofold test that the claim is tethered to the collective functioning of the House and that it is necessary to the discharge of the essential duties of a legislator. Articles 105 and 194 of the Constitution seek to sustain an environment in which debate and deliberation can take place within the legislature. This purpose is destroyed when a member is induced to vote or speak in a certain manner because of an act of bribery. Sixth, the expressions anything and any must be read in the context of the accompanying expressions in Articles 105(2) and 194(2). The words in respect of means arising out of or bearing a clear relation to and cannot be interpreted to mean anything which may have even a remote connection with the speech or vote given. Seventh, bribery is not rendered immune under Article 1052 and the corresponding provision of Article 194 because a member engaging in bribery commits a crime which is not essential to the casting of the vote or the ability to decide on how the vote should be cast. The same principle applies to bribery in connection with a speech in the House or a committee. Eighth, corruption and bribery by members of the legislatures erode probity in public life. Ninth, the jurisdiction which is exercised by a competent court to prosecute a criminal offence and the authority of the House to take action for a breach of discipline in relation to the acceptance of a bribe by a member of the legislature exist in distinct spheres. The scope, purpose and consequences of the court exercising jurisdiction in relation to a criminal offence and the authority of the House to discipline its members are different. 10th, the potential of misuse against individual members of the legislature is neither enhanced nor diminished by recognizing the jurisdiction of the court to prosecute a member of the legislature who is alleged to have indulged in an act of bribery. 11th, the offence of bribery is agnostic to the performance of the agreed action and crystallizes on the exchange of illegal gratification. It does not matter whether the vote is cast in the agreed direction or if the vote is cast at all. The offence of bribery is complete at the point in time when the legislator accepts the bribe. And lastly, the interpretation which has been placed on the issue in question in the judgment of the majority in P.V. Narasimha Rao results in a paradoxical outcome where a legislator is conferred with immunity when they accept a bribe and follow through by voting in the agreed direction. On the other hand, a legislator who agrees to accept a bribe but eventually decide to vote independently will be prosecuted. Such an interpretation was held to be contrary to the text and purpose of Articles 105 and 194, and hence the majority judgment was overruled on this point. So this was it for this video and this judgment. I hope you all understood the topic and found the discussion to be fruitful. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.